The project date triggers let you time workflow actions around a project's start or end date. You might use these triggers to send kickoff forms before a project begins, change the project status for an upcoming event, or follow up after a project ends. There are 4 triggers available for this purpose: before project start date, after project start date, before project end date, and after project end date. If your project has an official start date and end date in Dubsado, the start date triggers will calculate from the first date in your date range, and the end date triggers will calculate from your last date in your date range. If your project has a single date as the project date, you can use either the start date triggers or the end date triggers. That single date will be treated as both the start and end. If you'd like the action to occur on the actual project date, you can use any of the triggers with the number of hours, days, or weeks set to 0. If your project date does not include a time, this will trigger around midnight. If your project date does have a time, the action will take the time into account. Tip number 1. For these triggers to work properly, be sure to have an official project date, whether that is set manually or by mapping a client's response on a form. If no project date is set, the workflow will not run the action until a date is set. Tip number 2. In Dubsado, the project date is completely separate from an appointment date. If your client makes an appointment with you through a Dubsado scheduler, the date and time of the appointment will not automatically be set as the project date.